do have a quorum established. If everyone would please rise for a moment of silence and pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Again, this is a budget workshop, review of the 25-26 proposed budget and legislative updates. Ms. Diaz and Moore.
Okay, so we all just came back from SLI and we heard that there's still there were lots of legislative changes that were adopted, but we're still waiting on some direction, some interpretation. But I want to start really by commending Amalia for the work that she's done over the last couple of weeks. She has worked some extremely long hours to be able to put a proposed budget together. That still has a lot of holes and questions because there's still a lot of things out there that could happen. First and foremost, we approved the compensation plan based on what we know that the state is going to fund for those $8,000 and $4,000 raises. However, on Thursday, June 12th, we finally received some information from TEA, which gave us a little bit more information on who generates what funding and where monies can be used. So basically, there's still a lot of questions. There's still a lot of stuff that can happen. So much so that in the letter to the administrator that was put out by TEA, they actually stated that for those of us that are June 30th budgets, be prepared to have to do budget amendments. That's coming straight from TEA because there's going to be some changes as to how funding is determined and what is going to happen. So a lot of these forms, everyone here tonight is familiar with. You've seen them before. So what we do is we look at the approved 24-25 budget, and then we look at the proposed 25-26 budget, and then we have an increase-decrease column. We look at revenue, we look at expenditures, and of course we look at how that impacts fund balance. And then in the end, we end up with the budget summary report. The reason for tonight's meeting is that we did not want to put out the proposed budget to the public without formally going through it with the board, okay? So it does have to be, based on our public notice, it does have to be put on, it does have to be put out to the public by Thursday the 19th. So that was the main reason for today's meeting. So I'm going to go over a few of the numbers, and then I'm going to let Amalia kind of jump in and go from there. So we'll start with revenue, and like I said, you can see what was approved last year, what was generated last year, what was proposed. The local revenue was a little over $7 million. For this year, you can see that the local revenue has actually dropped to 6.9, a decrease of 858, 347. The state revenue 896 with an increase of 1.483178. Proposed 1.483178. That increase that you're going to see there is what is being generated based on the House bill for teacher raises. So that's a big chunk that we see there. Federal 62,795. Proposed for this coming year is going to be 153. And then you can see the comparison in revenue, 8.9. We have a drop in revenue, 8.58726, a difference of 181,253. So that's the change in the income that what the district is bringing in. This part in my conversations with Amalia is what could change. There's still some things that could happen here that would impact the revenues. Amalia, do you want to add any other information on that part?
That's a good summary. Those numbers that are currently, there for the 25-26 proposed revenue, were generated by data that we had even before TEA put out their Thursday information. And so this whole weekend, consultants, business managers, we've all been trying to interpret. And so that will be updated probably by the time we get to the June 30th adopted budget. Those revenues, we would expect to see some changes based on how TA is turning out their information.
And I think that's when Amalie and I met, we both discussed how important it is that we focus on the word proposed. You know, because there is still, this may look a little different on June the 30th, you know. We're not saying it's gonna look drastically different, but as more information comes out, the budget that we bring for the board to adopt on June the 30th may look a little different. So then we go to expenditures, and we look at number one, payroll costs. So the payroll cost did go up. That does include the money that we're gonna get from the state. Okay, so the 611 isn't just money that was just generated from our local, but it's it's money that the state is providing. But again, if you recall, the compensation, when we did the compensation plans, you know, we did let y'all know that it's really only partially funded. You know, fringe benefits weren't calculated into how the raises would be impacted. The board was very gracious and still gave the 3% to the other members of the school district. So payroll costs ended up going up, 611,485. I think, Amalia, we could say that about how much of that salary cost is going to be covered by the state. Like, how much of that is from the award? Did we calculate about 350? Or not necessarily? That's okay. That's okay.
So TASB's model, it had it. If you remember the little green bars, it would tell you what's covered, what's not covered. The total was 421. I want to say more than that according to TASB's calculations.
So about 400,000 of that is coming from the increase that the state is providing, that 586 up at the top. Contracted services, that 339,911 that is cut, that's recapture. Okay. So we're no longer going to be in recapture, and when Amalia first brought the budget to us, we had budgeted 300,000 to be able to pay recapture. So now we cut that from the budget because we shouldn't have to pay recapture. So we were able to cut contracted services because we're not going to pay recapture. Supplies and materials, we cut about 12,966, and that's just your regular supplies, regular instructional materials. You know, we have the teachers turn in their needs and wants list. Teachers, you may hear from them. Anything that was on their wants list, they didn't get. Okay, if it was on their needs list, they got it. But if it was on their wants list, like they wanted to, I don't know, at the elementary, replace clocks for teaching, telling time. Well, we went and looked at them, and if the clocks were in fairly good shape, we were not replacing the clocks, you know. So, you know, just little things that we looked at to see where we could cut. Travel fees and other operating costs, we cut that by 27,585. That is cutting back on field trips, okay, and it's also cutting back on athletic travel. So I did have a meeting with Coach Yeager already, and for out-of-town games, they're not taking everybody, okay? They will have some sort of tryouts, you know, so if you have 65 people on the football team, okay, we're not traveling with 65 people and feeding 65 kids. He may have a team of 40 that he's taking, you know. And it's not just football, it's everybody, you know, it's everybody. You know, we're really looking at if we can narrow it down to one bus instead of two, if we can cut 10 meals, you know, so whatever we can cut, travel fees and other operating costs. Debt services did go up by 4,253. Capital outlay and equipment, 226,945. Basically, that is what we spent on the buses, okay? So since we're not purchasing new, vehicles, we're not doing anything new to fleet, so we cut, last year we spent $391. This year, we're back to just the basics, just to be able to keep the fleet, going, and, you know, whatever maintenance needs comes up. Mr. Guzman asked if there was any major projects. We're not updating HVAC systems, we're not doing anything, we're just putting enough money in there that if something breaks down, we can at least fix it and hold on. So if you look at it, even with the decrease in revenue, okay, if you look at the expenditures from 24, 25 to 25, 26, we only increased expenditures by $8,000. You know, so we really tried to keep our expenditures down to the bare minimum. Molly, anything on expenditures that I missed?
No.
And I'm gonna go through the whole page and then y'all we can stop for questions. So what we usually do next for the board is we show, so what was the actual net change to fund balance? So for 24-25, at this time last year, on June 30th, or whenever we approved the budget, we used that green number. So the board approved 1.527409 as our budget deficit last year. That's what we approved, okay? That's what we basically said, okay, this is what we're gonna need, okay, to be able to function all year. We were able to not do the 1.5 and do 868,317. So through budget amendments that Amalia brought, through the zero solar payment that came in, due to not getting the Suburbans and moving on our fleet project, you know, we were able to keep it at 868,317. For this year, at the very first budget workshop, we brought you a number, again, you look at the green, first budget workshop, we brought you a number of 1.367093 for the first budget workshop. Again, with what we know, okay, with what we know currently, because they're also talking about the compressed tax rate, okay? They're also talking about the increased in homestead exemption, but they're saying they're gonna do a hold harmless, which means that we'll get those monies. But Amalia has kind of taken all of that into consideration, the best that we know, and we're looking at dipping into fund balance right at about $1 million, okay? So from what the true number is for 24-25 to the number that we're asking for to 25-26, it's a difference of about 189,584, which okay, and we feel like we've gotten really good at budgeting and putting things where they need to. If we stick to this number, when we stick to this number and nothing else changes, okay, we, at this time in 2026, June 30th of 2026, we have an ending fund balance of about $4 million. So I know that was a lot to kind of take in, so I'm gonna just kind of stop and let y'all take a minute. If you have any questions, we'll do our very best to answer them.
I guess what I'd like is maybe a little conversation of how deep are we willing to go into fund balance in the future before we are willing to entertain some hard choices. I mean, we're very fortunate to have what does that number look like? 3 million, 3.5, 2?
So the board has always directed Amalia and I that we would never, ever want to go under 6 months. But every year we're getting closer and closer to that. It's going to be difficult. This year was legislative session, so no changes will be made for next year. Next year is not a legislative session. So you're right, we will have to have those difficult conversations where, there will be no raise, you know, or there will be a very minimal raise, you know, or if the state gives us money for the teachers to get a raise, and it's only gonna be the teachers that get a raise. You know, we don't do the other 200,000. The other thing is that people who were letting me know that they're going to retire in December, those positions aren't gonna be filled, you know, so. But you also sat through legislative session that talked about the number of things that are changing, you know, the number of requirements, you know. So it's like they want us to do things, I sat through one where it was all about, you know, you have to do a RIF, you have to do a RIF. Well, at the elementary, for the most part, we're at 2 teachers per grade level with 38 kids. So if I go down to 1 teacher, I can't fit 38 kids in one class. So
reduction in force is not.
we're done there. Could I possibly shape a little bit more? And we have been. That's the other thing that I feel like I want to make sure that the board and the community knows. We've gone from 55 to 53 to this year we're looking at 51, you know. So we continue to move that down, especially because our enrollment is going down. However, we have to be very careful with that comment because even though our overall enrollment went down, our special programs enrollment went up, okay? So if we look at our special ed population, we have more kids qualifying for special ed, which require one-on-one by law. If their IEP says they need a one-on-one, then we have to, you know, we have to put somebody in there.
Nobody wants to see a reduction of programs. That's one of the things about Brackett is that anybody who wants to play football just about can.
But transportation and what we call function 36, you know, that's athletic travel, you know, is where we spend a lot of money, and we don't get a whole lot of money back from transportation. So we have buses that run to the port, but we're not generating a whole lot of money from that. The next page that you see, I'm just going to keep going, and y'all can keep thinking as you go. Page 2, that's labeled page 2, the yellow and the green. This is what will be published, okay? So this page right here is what is required to be published for the proposed budget. So it has to be by function. So this shows, basically it shows the top part, that expenditures of 9645. It shows it now, where is it in function? And it's off a little bit, and I know you told me why, Amalia, but you might have to remind me why those numbers don't.
Oh, at the bottom, because not all expenditures are included on either side, and then some are sort of extracted, like in the 41, they wanted us to do lobbying. They're not a budget like we did the other sheet.
So again, what you'll see at the bottom is that from last year to this year, the difference, the true increase. So even with the raises you gave, even with, you know, the cutting and the adding, the difference from the 24-25 proposed budget to the 25-26 proposed budget is $13,464. That's what we've increased the budget by. So with that being said, you'll see that it's not so much an expenditure issue as much as it is a revenue issue. But that's the part that's really hard to address. And then
Miss Diaz, I just remembered. The reason there's a difference is food service is included in here. I forgot about that. They're in function 35. That's why it's more.
now, we lost revenue this year because we did have a drop in enrollment. So even though, and we had this conversation, so even though our attendance was on the right path, the drop in enrollment reduced our ADA. You know, so we want to go out and look for kids if they're not in school, you know, get them enrolled in school, and then make sure that they're coming. So another form, a template that's just for board. It is public on the board agenda, but it's not required to be published, is the last page, which again shows the 24-25 current budget based on 509 students, 25-26 proposed budget is based on 510 students, which is where we finish. It's not where we were at snapshot, but it is where we finished at the end of the year. And then the comparison there. So those are all the templates, just kind of showing how we came up with the yellow-green comparison that will be published on Thursday.
Better than the one with recapture.
Correct. We were gonna more like at 1.3, closer to 1.4.
Do you have a sense if the cadre will do this next year?
No, I don't think it will.
Good. That's what we do.
How many teachers have we done right now?
51? How many teachers are we budgeting
Oh,
for?
yeah, no, but do we have the 51 teachers?
I have 2 possible vacancies. Because the 2 that we just hired turned down the positions. So the 2 that were approved by the board, those now are back on the table.
It's just a sad affair.
One of the things, I just want to make sure. Question I have is in regards to the local, the significant decrease of 858,000. This is being conservative or closer to actual?
The local has between 24, 25, 26, almost $900,000. Well, the net of really about $700,000 of the zeros overpayment. So they gave us 900 one year, this coming year they're gonna give us more like 250. So that's the significant, I might say. The other is the taxes that are included here are actually less probably than what we'll end up with, depending on the tax rate that's approved. So
So the 7.7 includes the solar payment?
right, yes, that's why that increase is so much. Or decrease rather.
So, the other question I have, if I may. What was the historical and local without the solar taxes? Is it closer to the 6.9?
Let me see if I can find the last workshop.
I think if we go to budget to the last
Yes.
workshop.
I think so. Let me look at it.
So the state line item includes the funding, expected funding we're receiving for the teachers' salaries.
Correct, the teachers and the staff that generate funding. Yes.
So when we look at that, I know this conference, we kind of looked at the salary, we approved it, and it was still questions, and there's still
And
questions.
there's still.
I just want to make sure, because one of the things that I feel was clarified was the budgeting of the salaries. So if it's a teacher with more than 3 years, 3 or more years of experience, they're the ones that qualify for the 8,000. If they're certified and they're working as a teacher, instructional. If they're 0 to 2 and haven't completed up to their 3 years, they don't get an increase.
They get the 1675.
Correct. That comes out of our
Correct.
budget.
They
from
don't
the state
generate.
From the state funding. So then, if you're part-time, if you're a coach and you're working, have instructional of at least 4 hours, that I didn't get clarification, it was, if it was at least 4 hours a day, or how that was defined by the state, then you would qualify for a 4,000. So if you're a librarian and doing instructional, you have to have a minimum of at least 4 hours a day to qualify for at least the $4,000. So when we did the raises, and I know we've already approved that, did we take that into consideration? Because all of that was still up in the air.
Yeah, so I think I know what you're asking, okay? And I think I have the answer. None of our coaches only coach. They all have a full instructional day. So they might have 6 instructional periods and 1 athletic period,
Okay.
or at most 2 athletic
So
periods.
the number that we budgeted was the 8,000 met the criteria for
Correct.
8,000. And then those that fell outside of that window, we budgeted out of our funding.
Correct. Yeah, and so there are school districts where they may have coaches that coach full-time. I actually have a friend who, that he coaches full-time, so he takes care of the fields and he takes care of this and he coaches full-time, he's not a teacher of record, so that's what PEAMS calls it. You have to be a teacher of record. All of our staff are teacher of record for 8 class periods.
Yeah, that was emphasized throughout, was that the individual has to have be a teacher of record, and it has to be reflected in the PEAMS.
Yeah.
Okay, so the variance there is, it nets to a decrease of 181,000 in total revenue. So we're decreasing revenue by 181,000.
And that revenue will change, because that is based on preliminary values. So by the time we get certified values, it's gonna be different. It's gonna change also because it doesn't account for the increased homestead exemption for all of the,
How is that gonna?
yes,
Yeah.
so this morning, those numbers have kind of already changed. But for June 30th, when we bring it adopted, all of that will be now factored in, because TA had not given us anything until Thursday afternoon. And the way that they do the homestead exemption is that they do it as an expected constitutional amendment that will be voted on. They've done it like that in the last couple of years, but we're also gonna need numbers from the CAT. So they give us those numbers, we report them to TA, they calculate the tax rate, so definitely will change, not drastically like in the BSA, but it's not accounting for a lot of the,
Like maybe the October timeframe is typically.
that, when we get to September, October, that is actually the financial tool to follow for the year. For what we're currently working on, quite frankly, it's just meeting the legal requirement to have a budget in by June 30th. That's why TEA recognizes that and explained that in their TAA, saying, you guys, we know you're gonna amend your budget. Do what you need to get done,
To
so
get
you can
more
meet
done.
the budget adopted.
That's when it hurts, that because of the whole, property taxes and all. In your experience and your best judgment, with these changes with the homestead, do you feel that it'll be a significant decrease in revenue?
No, because whatever it decreases, the state will hold us harmless.
Okay,
So it's kind of been,
it's gonna be a wash.
you could see, you might see a shift in local and state, that's where you're gonna see the difference, the
Is
movement.
the federal dollars from your grants?
No, what federal, 100,000 of the federal dollars that you see there is a booking entry because it's E-rate. And so we get E-rate funding for technology every year. And so we have to, because we get it as a discount, money doesn't flow through us, but it's, you have to book that you're getting E-rate and that you're spending it also. So it's not coming in to us, but it's on the bottom, it's on the top. So if we had to net that number, It's only 53,000, which is charge revenue, which we do expect for the last year that we filed.
The one for Medicaid.
Yes, that's the estimate we're putting in there, that hopefully, when they finish with all the reviewing of the report, we could still see about 53,000.
How about your grant revenues? Your grant revenues?
Those are not included here at all, because this is just a general fund, but, some of our grants are already coming to their end, like Stronger Connections. Some of the safety grants are not renewed, from my understanding, they didn't give more.
One was replaced with another, the safety grant ones. So the Stronger Connection will come to an end this upcoming fiscal year.
26, 27. No, we're gonna spend it this coming year,
Yeah.
25, 26 actually.
Okay.
And then ACE is, and I think whatever we were awarded, we're already using it. So then it was just better not to put it under revenue
The
because.
monies were received, they just haven't been expensed.
Mhm.
Are those paid, those salaries that are covered through the grant dollars, are those salaries included in your payroll costs?
Yes.
Oh, not the grand dollar ones,
Not the
the
grant.
opposite part. So if we have an employee that is,
If
funded
I was-
2080, the 80 is in here, but the 20 is in the grant you're not seeing.
Okay.
So when we did the payroll file, we were able to go through and say, okay, this person's salary include only 80%, include only 60%, include 40%, depending on how much they were grant funded.
And even that, by June 30th, we'll have a better picture as what teachers actually are gonna sign on with us. I mean, we did take their contracts, so we'll tweak that a little bit. Didn't change too much, but there's more tweaking.
I think there's a,
Can I get a little more clarification as to if the legislature already approved the money, what's the delay or why can't they can't explain that Brackett ISD is gonna get $10 instead of, well, you might get $10 instead of $8? Why can't they just say you're gonna get $10?
Because it's based on qualifications. So we need to submit, we have X number of teachers that have 5 years plus. Are they gonna go by how many teachers we had in November, how many teachers we had in May? Are they gonna do it based on snapshot? Are they gonna ask us for? So they have to figure out how are they gonna get the data from us, so that way they know how much to send us.
Or the timing, not so much, we know what the data is, we just don't know the timing of when the snapshot time.
Right, but then TEA will do a review to make sure that if you're saying Mr. Guzman qualifies for $8,000, does he meet the qualifications? Yes, okay, we send 8,000. Okay, then the next person, you know, and so, every person is generating funds. So we feel like we know how much each person is going to generate, but it's not finalized until TEA
The
says.
process not.
because y'all have to upload the information and then through the teams.
Through Teams.
And then once they get that data, then they go and validate it.
Yeah.
Just real quick on the capital outlay and equipment, that's where we're seeing the variance and the expenditures to bring those buses.
Yes. And that's what that difference is pretty much.
I mean, going back to the comment that was made earlier in regards to the fund balance. It is scary knowing that there's,
Oh, very.
because then how much longer are you looking at this?
No, we're in dire need. Like this, it is a dire situation.
2-3 years.
Yeah, like we cannot function like this.
In all
Yeah,
honesty.
because that 4 million is about 6 months already. When you factor in so currently our payrolls are at about 530,000 plus expenditures, so that might actually be a little less once you factor in the new raises.
And I think when Amalia and I first started together, we were still doing a lot of adjustments. and now we feel like we do the adjustments ahead of time, so this is a very real picture.
It's closer to action
Yes.
and conservative.
Yes.
Conservative's good.
But even being conservative still puts us in, I mean, we're, in no way am I painting that we're in a pretty situation, you know,
But this is not totally our doing, it's the state's inability to provide the correct funding.
What I would tell anyone asking is that, we have been retarding the rate of decay, so to speak, and hoping to see some relief from the legislature, but the time is fast approaching where we're gonna have to make some hard choices.
so if you recall, when the legislative session first opened, they talked about increasing the standard allotment, which is what everybody really wanted them to do. So we wanted them to give teacher raises, absolutely, teachers deserve raises, okay? But in order to help us operate a school district, we really needed the increase in the standard allotment. Because if you recall, there has not been a raise or a change in the basic standard allotment for over, was it 7 years or something like that? So originally they had said, okay, we're gonna consider increasing the standard allotment from 6,100 to 6,700, okay? That all went out the window, they gave us, the allotment raise was $55, you know? That didn't even cover, you know, inflation.
But knowing the history, why do we keep thinking that they're gonna do right by us?
Yeah, no, I mean,
I mean, are we as a district doing absolutely, I mean,
you know,
for instance, like, I'll ask, what is our teacher ratio here to students? What do you look, cause on here you're looking at 510 students to what, 51 teachers? So what is that, like 101?
when you divide it flat out,
So if you take out the SPED teachers, the SPED students that you can't touch, right?
right?
So how many teachers are those? You're looking at
And I
6?
have 6 teachers that are special ed teachers.
Because that's what a lot of schools are doing, they're going to bigger classrooms where we can't follow that same model we used to do where we wanted 2 to 3 teachers per grade level.
And we've already,
Which is, I mean, or then the way our staff, our employment has to follow our enrollment. You know, and our enrollment's been going degrading.
yeah,
And is our employment following the same? Or are we still
We've gone-
status quo with the same amount?
no, we've gone from 55 to 53 to 51. And
How about in general, I mean,
and
just,
so at the elementary, when I first started here, the expectation was 3 teachers per grade level, okay? That was not feasible, and so we left 3 teachers at some grade levels. Then last year, we left 3 teachers at one grade level had 3 teachers. So all my other classrooms were at 18. You know, you're looking at an average class size of anywhere from 36 to 40, you know. So they had an average of 18 to 20 kids in the class. At the secondary, we could probably still cut some more, but what happens is that you look at the number of preps that a secondary teacher has. So if I want to cut math teachers, for example, then I need 1 math teacher, but that math teacher has to teach Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Pre-Cal, Calculus. So they're going to have 5 different preps, you know, which that's what becomes a challenge. Right now I have 1 that teaches English 1, 1 that teaches English 2, and 1 that teaches English 3 and 4. I could cut, and then we need 1 that teaches, but then that 1 person would teach English 1, 2, 3, and 4, you know? And so it becomes a lot of prep, is
Is it more on the elementary side that there's opportunity, or you're
To cut? Oh, no, the elementary, we're down to 2 teachers, they're already at 18.
What grade has 3 teachers?
This year will be 4th grade.
What grade, isn't that because of the storm, right?
That is because of the numbers, they're at 42 kids,
Okay.
you know. So it's now, so before we used to do it, 5th grade teaches, 5th grade has star reading, star math, star science. So we said we need rotations, you know. We're not gonna be able to do that, you know. I would say the smaller class size, the reduction in force, as much as I would hate to see it happen there, would have to happen at the secondary. Do I think that would impact teacher retention? Absolutely, because now you're asking me to teach 6 different types of math all day long. You know?
But secondary is so crucial because if you look at your scores, our scores are suffering and.
At the
we're-
junior,
Yeah.
yeah. So that's why you go like this, you know.
So if I look at enrollment count, we actually increased by 1. 25, 26, we're at 510, where last year we were at 509.
We kind of just rounded because we're assuming.
Yeah.
That's what we're working
And it was 509.65.
And in August of last year, when we started the year, we were at 531.
And the year
Okay,
before
that's
that,
what I
We
was.
were at 551, and the year before
Before
that,
that?
we were at 571.
That's what I was gonna ask you, where was it, that'd be good for us to have as a snapshot, just so when we look at this, we can see.
Enrollment counts?
Yeah, that's not bad.
But how do we,
Just for future, to have it there, that way we know, we can then see the data is following the.
Yes,
So-
because enrollment is what ends
driver.
up being their funding because of attendance aiding.
is there any reason what's causing the lack of enrollment other than lack of kids?
Burdens are down.
Yeah, there's no kid, so if you look at birth rate, you know, birth rate is down.
We have an
Yeah.
aging population.
That, and our lower numbers right now, where are they? Pre-K, kinder, first. You know, normally, right now, I'm just trying to decide 2 teachers or 1 teacher for pre-K. I'm barely gonna have enough to fill 1 teacher. I think I had 14 kids that did pre-K roundup.
Because this is showing the impact of vouchers which start next year.
Two. We may pick up a few kids, we may lose a few kids with vouchers. Sorry to say.
I think that also started when the base put the elementary.
That too, they put a special campus on at the base, yeah.
I didn't know they had one.
They built one, an elementary, so we lost all their base kids that used to come.
They got it in 2020 or 2021, I think.
That's when we started seeing the
That's
drop.
that's not-
That's the.
Yeah, that was a smart move by,
But we
So-
really haven't seen a drop in base kids. Yeah, and we've actually seen an increase in base kids as far as secondary kids. So we see a lot, so like the bus, we didn't used to send a bus. Remember, the bus would just go to the base and pick up 4 or 5 kids. Now they do a stop at the dollar store, and we're picking up probably a good 18, you know, kids. So I don't think it's too much of that. We probably maybe have lost, we could have more elementary kids. But I think when I started here, they were debating on whether or not to even keep the bus going to the base, because they were down to less than 10 kids. And then
What's
that's
the-
why.
I don't remember the number that we needed to get to for it to be profitable.
Yeah,
There was a number that we had a study done that showed what we needed to be at.
and that's why I opened that second stop, because we weren't meeting that number.
Right.
I know just generally that births have decreased. So if and I know that because I look at that. So I wanted to know, has birth rates decreased significantly in the past decade? And yes, birth rates have decreased significantly in the past decade. So there's the answer to your.
Yeah, I've said it to some
Yes,
people,
I think,
I don't believe there's a whole bunch of, 4, 5, and 6-year-olds running around Brackett not in school. I don't believe that,
Not that many homeschooled either.
Yeah. And if there are a dozen kids homeschooled, you're talking about one third grader, one fourth grader, one, you know, so adding one to each grade level.
Just out of curiosity, that big isn't tracking those individuals that leave, or students that leave due to face-related, now I'm gonna go to school here.
There may be a report in Keens because when they leave, they have to tell us why. And if they're military connected, we would see the number of military connected kids that are leaving.
I was just curious. But I do know, like Jesse said, they did open one.
Yeah, no,
I don't know that.
and that may have hurt us getting more elementary age kids, because the kids that we get right now from the base that are on our bus are junior high kids, and it's because of the issues, you know, the concerns that people have a big school district for junior high.
Well, that school they opened on base is only an elementary school.
Only the fifth grade.
There used to be 10 people at the bus stop at the Ford, now I see 4 in one city. Well, I commend you for all the work, because I know how tedious this is.
Well, in Christie Pedersen, I actually, the payroll part of it, because it's a huge percentage of it, it took a long time.
Unfortunately, we don't have a marketing budget, so we can follow everybody around and come bracket.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and then we just have to be careful too, because we get a lot of, I don't say we get a lot, the student group that we're seeing the most growth is students qualifying for special education. And as that grows, that just requires more cost, because then based on their individual education plan, if it states there that they need a one-on-one, then that's law, and we're required. We have lots of aides. We have lots of instructional aides.
And the allotment for that doesn't, which we know is minimal, doesn't go into effect till 26, 27.
Right, and that'll be a tiered allotment now. So our kids who require that one-on-one instruction are coded differently, so they're gonna generate more funding, but that's not happening yet.
If we go down to the page, and then I'll wrap up my questions, page 3. Core curricular, extracurricular activities, there's a variance of 322,000. That's a significant increase.
36? That's the buses.
That's the bus, oh, it was recorded on that line?
Yes, because they're activity buses, we put
Oh.
them in the activity function,
Okay.
because we can't put them on the routes.
Okay, and so what's the contracted instructional services between schools? I know last year there was 313, and this year we're not budgeting anything.
That's the
Recapture.
recapture.
That's a, oh, okay. So we're certain that we don't have to pay the recapture?
No, because the increase in the weights and the compression and the additional homestead exemption, we're out of recapture. Unless our values are incredibly high, you know.
Did that solar, that new solar farm come on the, yet?
I don't know, see, so it just depends on values,
They had 2 coming out.
and it depends on the
They're
growth
all
of the
high.
values.
I don't know if one kicked in this year, or if it's gonna be, but they got 2 big, and then they're usually front.
Yeah, and I think this year was a combination of things,
So the values could skyrocket
they could.
with those 2.
Preliminaries do not show a big increase, for the following year, but, I believe January 1st is the day that the chief of treasury uses to put them on roll the next year, so if they didn't go up this year, they may have fallen.
But if we get it, it's a plus for us, right?
Well, it throws back into recapture.
Oh, it's on that.
Yeah.
But will they give us, will we, benefit from any funding from them to kind of have that wash?
No, once the values are so high that we are is, and the reason I say that we're not in recapture this year is because our entitlement grew, because they gave us an increase in the standard allotment, they gave us an increase in the small and mid-sized allotment, they increased, the salary pay, all that kind of like put us in a good distance from recapture. But again, we go back to what is the community doing? If we're bringing in high value commercial or utilities, then here we go again with their values going up and our entitlement staying here. Values generating this income entitlement here, well, this part goes back to the state.
The plant maintenance and operations, I know one of the sessions I went to was really understanding your plant maintenance plan and prioritizing. I know there was a plan that was done and we looked at it, but are we prioritizing, like maybe looking at the plan and saying, doing a 5-year budget versus let's try to do this all at once?
Yeah, the projects that were on that assessment plan are high dollar items. So, so we had hoped to tackle the HVAC one, you know, and we had brought it to the board that we wanted to use some of that Sears solar money just to tackle the HVAC, which was about $265,000, and then the next one was gonna be electrical. So we have a plan, but right now, we don't have the funds to be able to move forward with those plans. So we just put the same amount of money in there to tackle
Just the day-to-day.
the day-to-day.
Right, which
No.
utilities is huge, which thankfully though, we do have a good contract with our, electricity. We're paying like a 4%, and we've been researching to see where we were. Current rates are 6%, and we're locked in until about 2033. I remember the date for that 4%. Everybody else is seeing a 6, 7. So we've looked at every area, every contract, everything we could look at, talk to people, negotiated with people, and this is as high as we can get.
What was the compression rate that you did the proposed budget on?
The proposed budget, is 0.6669, the tax rate, and I think it's gonna stay the same. But everybody, who has a homestead exemption will see a drop in their taxes because we're gonna take 40,000
Less,
of value on everybody.
Ms. Diaz, you said the E3 is almost done?
So I did make that comment to you,
It's after the next
but
year.
it's still quite a bit, bit of ways. I asked Amalia today and she thought it was closer to 10 years still.
I think it's 7 or 8 years before I lived it.
Yeah, I was like, oh no, we're done like next year. And then today I asked her and she was like, no, it's still got a good bit.
When I went back, it was when Mancho was here. I think it was a 10-year,
Yeah,
Right.
it's going,
and that's 100,000.
yes, because we pay, well, this year, that's why you saw the debt service go up a little bit, because we're paying 85,000 on the principal and 20-something thousand on the interest.
Your interest went down, but your principal, that's because your
Yes.
balance is going down, so your interest
Right,
is.
they increased their principal. Let's see, that note ends in 2033. Got 5 more fiscal years, or 6? And again, I mean, expenditures, it's difficult to keep them steady for too long because regardless of the number of students enrolled, you have your fixed costs, property insurance, utilities, the cleaning part, the maintenance part, all of those things. So as we lead kiddos, we're not leading the expenditures, and it's harder to cover those. So yes, I agree with Mr. Bonacci, at some point, we've already made a lot of our to, cure that concern, because there's no money. Our vehicles are aging, the Suburbans, we don't have money to replace those. So, it's just kind of staying alive on the expenditures
Band-Aids.
and and each time that the state comes out of a legislative session, unintentionally, sometimes they end up with laws that become unfunded, but yet they were a law, so we have to abide.
He's
It's
all.
kind of like the salary, I mentioned this last time.
Yeah, there's no benefits on
Is
this.
they're gonna approve it, they're funding us this year, next year, and then they'll go to next legislation session, you're not gonna, they're gonna say, yeah, we're gonna do away with this, but you're not gonna go back and say, okay, I'm on, I need
The fact that
the
it's
16,000 I gave you the last 2 years.
Well,
So-
and even things that I don't think everybody realizes. For example, one of the student discipline laws that changed, okay? If a student is assigned out of school suspension and a parent states that they don't have supervision for their child, we have to do in-school suspension. So if we have a bunch of kids in in-school suspension, well, then I need more staff to take care of, to watch the kids. So the kid made a mistake, got in trouble, and rather than being watched by his parent at home, he's back to being our responsibility, which if I have our regular ISS kids, and now I have my OSS kids with my ISS kids, technically they're not supposed to be in the same room, so I have to get a substitute, to go with it. So there's a lot of laws that changed that are also going to incur additional costs. I mean, I sat there looking at all those laws, and I was like, there's, one of the ones that I sent to Mr. Solis, we're supposed to have a ballistic shield per campus, okay? And the mechanism that you use to break down a door, okay?
You're looking 6,000 to 10,000 per campus, probably.
Yes. So I emailed Mr. Solis and I said, we need to start looking at this. He brought it to me today. They're $6,000 to $10,000 to be able to fund, but they gave me $20 more per kid for safety and security. So what they gave me and what they're requiring,
Not even close.
it's not even close. That's why I said these, and again, and I go back to the compensation plan. They say they funded the raise. That's not 110% accurate. So these mandates are unfunded mandates. They're partially funded, but they're unfunded mandates. So y'all saw on Saturday those 3 pages back to back, front and back of things we need to do. Who's gonna do them? I had a meeting today with my 2 directors, and it was like, okay, we don't have a federal programs director. Here, Ms. Price, we don't have a, whatever director. Here you go, Amalia. The 3 of us are gonna sit and just kind of work this through because we don't have the staff to be able to meet the requirements. Whit and I sat through TIA. That's typically a full-time position, and what am I doing? I'm giving a little stipend here and a little stipend here and saying, please help me, so we can get it off the ground. Because we don't have a choice. If we want to fund teacher salaries, teacher raises, we have to do TIA. So they have all these pages and pages of mandates, but really they're not, when they say they gave us they passed an $8.5 million, billion-dollar plan for schools. It's just not completely
Accurate.
accurate.
I would suggest you put that in paper.
There was an attorney, and I think, Gally, you were in that session, that said they shuffled the monies around to not touch the rainy day fund. And he said, and we're in the middle of a thunderstorm here, like it's raining, it's hurricane season.
There are
Yeah.
numerous state offices with tons of money that they've basically overtaxed us.
And they're holding it in what they call that rainy day fund. So this money that they gave us, well, they got it from other places.
This doesn't come from the rainy day fund.
Yeah, it
The
doesn't
rainy
come.
fund has, I
getting ready to reach its max,
Mhm.
and they still didn't give us money from there. So and Amalia and I talked today, and I said, we really do, as a board, have to figure out how to become better advocates for rural districts. Like, we have to get involved in advocacy for school districts, because to increase the standard allotment by $55, that's not right.
You're absolutely correct, you have to be in their face, unfortunately, and be aggressive about it
Yes.
during the legislative session to make any impact. Because they're like, next, you go to them, and they're giving you 5 minutes, and in 5 minutes, you have to give them their spill, and then you move on to the next one, and you move on to the next one, so.
Wasn't Ted the advocating for us?
Yes, we did submit a couple of letters through organizations, but I mean, I'm talking getting to the point where I think we need to go give testimony.
You have to be
I sat through a pretty,
physically there.
I sat through a pretty good presentation put on by Brackett ISD, who, I think they went up there with 18 volunteers, and they covered, I think, 90 legislators. And, they got a lot of what they were asking for, they said. And they're one of the districts that gets, apparently there's a lot of money there, and a lot of it gets taken away from them. And so they lobbied pretty hard. They were in a consortium, I think, with Comfort and Blanco ISD, I think. And really, it's not enough to go up there during the session, because they've already got their arms twisted once they're in Austin. And I think you've got to start making a case, making it really obvious, cultivating a relationship with your local reps and your neighboring reps between sessions. And maybe right now is not really the time to develop that, a plan for that, but maybe we can meet, one-on-one later.
Mhm.
some-
Yeah,
some
it is
others.
something we have to figure out the how and the when and how to get involved.
It's kind of, head scratching, starting from ground zero, no,
I just find it hard to believe that they didn't know what they were doing. They knew it almost like they know exactly what they're doing. They just-
well, they know,
No, they know.
they know.
Yeah, I definitely don't think that they don't know what they're doing.
They just throw out a couple of dollars and.
They're not wanting to touch their savings.
They want me, yeah,
So the rainy day fund is their savings.
yes.
So they're not wanting to touch their savings. It's kind of like us looking at fund balance. We really don't want to touch it, but, in order to make things work, we have to touch it. They're saying, figure it out how to make it work. We're not touching our rainy day savings, but we've got to figure out how to get you money. So we're going to compress your tax rate, and we're going to do this, and we're going to change this, and we're going to change this, to create some money to say, look what we gave you. But you didn't give it to us. It was already existed from other things. It's a very, and like I said, it's taking me 3.5 years, and I still cannot say that I am 100% knowledgeable or comfortable in speaking on school finance, but school finance is an extremely complicated financial system. It's an extremely complicated financial system. And you can understand that one piece comes from property values, but there's another piece that comes from ADA, which isn't the attendance rate, which another piece that comes from a tax rate. We have people say, oh, our taxes have gone, the school tax rate has gone up. No, your school taxes may have gone up, but because your property value went up, our tax rate didn't go up, And so people think school taxes went up, but the tax rate didn't go up. Our tax rate has still been considerably low because we've been compressed. But if your values went up, then your bill to the school, went up. But there's just, and again, that's just one piece, but it's just extremely, it's a complicated system. It's a complicated system. page, 2, the yellow and green right there, what's up there, that's what will be, published.
This will be in the paper?
No, actually, this one will just be on our webpage.
Yeah,
In the paper, just the notice that we're having a meeting on the 30th.
And even though our webpage is not fully updated, we're gonna open it back up, so that way we can be in compliance with the law. Because the other thing would be that we could just post it out there, but if we just post it out there, I'm afraid that we'll get kicked back if we didn't make it public.
Is that gonna go to the paper?
Not this one.
Not this one. It does go to the paper at,
So when we approve it on the 30th?
Well, what we put in the paper, which came out last Thursday, was that we will have the budget adoption on the 30th. And the public hearing, and these are the numbers the public can come with to discuss with you on that day. Right.
Okay.
Mhm. So these are the numbers, this is the starting point for the public if they have questions.
I think when you do when you publish in the paper, the summary by you explaining this, because a lot of these people don't understand how this works and just feel that the district is not spending wisely. They're not gonna come up here and sit and listen to you guys if you're telling them, you know, or watch that. I guarantee you probably don't have many viewers, but there's a perception that we're not spending very wisely. And I think putting something out there that explains the gist of this stuff to some that don't know probably be good and more harm, in my opinion. Because a lot of this is not
sorry, I was looking to see how many were over there.
fault to you ladies and gentlemen in this office. And us keep thinking that the legislators are gonna save us. They're not.
Yeah.
Every time we go down there, we come back beat up with false hope.
And there's enough coach here that hasn't been here very long, but the players have always traveled. But this year, that's not gonna happen.
He's very concerned.
How do you think?
He's very concerned. He's very concerned about the community being upset with him. He's very concerned about parents being upset with him. He's very concerned that that's one of the ways that kids learn, by going and watching, even if they don't play, you're standing on the sidelines, you know, you watch when you learn. So he's concerned, you know, but there's not a single director, administrator, department that is not taking a cut. You know, my lower grade elementary teachers are very concerned that they don't get to go on field trips. You know, that we're not allowing them to,
But did the school not funding the field trips?
the K1 and 2 don't go.
Okay.
You know, 3rd, 4th, and 5th are gonna continue to have to fund their own. And that's that we're even leaving what they have to pay for transportation, it doesn't even cover half of the cost. You
We're
know,
still subsidized.
We're still subsidizing.
I think if the conversations start happening, and back to what Jesse was saying, is the transparency.
Yeah.
No.
It will
Why?
eliminate the.
Right, there's still gonna be people that are upset, it's not gonna be from lack of knowledge. So like, I did tell Coach Aver that after June 30th, when the budget is approved, I will meet with the head coaches, okay, and we'll discuss the changes with the head coaches. And then when the coaches meet with their parents and have their parental meetings. So we definitely are gonna put it out there, as much as we can. You know, I had teachers asking me at the end of last year, are we gonna have to do fundraising for travel? So when we have our district convocation, we'll lay that all out so they know from day one, you know, that this is how we're gonna something.
I can't remember if something came out publicly about that funding field trips.
Yes, I agree.
Handicap, that's quite a bit by being so long. Seems like the rest of the state jumps in from the feet. It's
We got anything, or we just all impressed enough for
projects, tax rates,
I'd like to say, I appreciate y'all's efforts. So,
It's hard to give bad news.
And it's a situation that no one is taking lightly. You know, we've had meetings with all the directors, we have had meetings with the campus principals. So no one is taking it lightly, you know. I think and I did send an email out to staff about the compensation plan being improved. I think everybody was very grateful that they got a raise. But I also mentioned in there that, you know, there's gonna be places that we're cutting, you know, so when you want the, I don't know, post-it charts, maybe you're not gonna get 5 packs, you're gonna get 1 pack, you know? I just think that, I think that, I would like to believe that my school staff, especially my administrative team, is very much aware that we are in dire need, you know?
somewhat that SLI right quick, I did talk to another, I can't remember where this small school was, they were going through the same thing, and what they did was wrote and hit up your top, property values, commercials, like Union Pacific and your solar farms, and got them to donate as far as like if you needed stuff done. Like I think one school got their lights fixed, explaining that, you know, we can't do 313s no more. We need, you know,
Real good.
Well, then something to point out too is that we don't have INS. A debt service, and most school districts do, so these commercial.
so they were getting some of these commercial companies to help fund projects, or, you know, I mean, I don't know if that's
capital improvement fund kind of thing.
yeah, I don't know, I mean,
Well, that's kind of what I was wondering. I mean, is that something that, is that even feasible without mentioning INS? Is that even possible to do without having bond debt out there? Setting up a capital improvement fund.
Oh, yes, you can always set one up. For example, you as a board could say, of the 4 million, put 2 million in a capital improvement project.
No, but opening it up and then going out and seeking donations for the capital improvement fund.
No,
I think is what you're
Oh,
talking
no,
about.
that's not, I don't see why that would be a problem. I mean, because that would be, for most of these companies, it's a tax write-off if they gave it to the school district, because we are a non-taxable organization. And then it could be put in a, I mean, I don't know how substantial it would be, if you could even get anything done with the amount of donation, it would just depend, and then the board can decide.
Would it be, I guess the theory would be you'd want to have something that you can let sit and collect over time, maybe year to year, if you couldn't get it all at once. Would that have a net? But you don't want to do that in a way where it has a negative effect.
Yeah, because if it doesn't grow at the same rate of inflation,
Right.
which is what happened to a lot of people who sold bonds
Yeah.
and took too long to build, they couldn't
They lost
produce
for
what they
sure.
promised the community because
Yeah.
they didn't build quick enough and inflation.
Well, then you want to have a very long school. Very long school.
Companies will pay. I mean, I know mine donates all over Eagle Pass, colleges. If you, write them, come back to an umbrella, they will.
And
I'm
if
sure
I-
these solar farms,
I'll ask, Hannah to see if there's any type of template that is used for, capital improvement fund donations. Maybe there's something that's,
Could you start a foundation and specifically say that those monies are earmarked for those things? Then that's, they're restricted funds.
Well, and it might work, and I don't know if it works for us or against us, but having a plan, because if I'm your donor, I wanna know, what are you gonna use it for?
Mhm.
Okay, well, we would like to do a
Like
quarter million on
HVACs.
lights.
that's what I was
We wanna finish the tennis courts, or we wanna do, and have a whole bunch
You
of
got a
projects,
project
and
list.
choose pick your project, you know,
Well, they
what?
talked about having a committee at one of the
Exactly.
sessions I went, so you have a committee, but you have to have a plan. And if we've done the plan assessment, kind of
We
already
can grab from there.
and then I would think a foundation would be a.
Or if those are too big, you could do some of the others, you know, because we know some of our other, like we said earlier, our buildings are deteriorating, or we need funds to make sure we upkeep our HVAC systems, which we haven't been able to. So it just depends on which targets, what kind of targets, and then maybe offer a list to the donors and say, what can you put your name to, you know?
Well, I think just as a pilot, I would want to start with something nice and modest, either a 5 or 6 figure goal. And be able to say this is HVAC for all 3 campuses or 4 campuses. And, you know, this is what we need, how much, you know, we're falling short. And, you know, just a little nice asset to level. And,
Well, and
Yes.
it's
How much are you short? All of it. Yeah.
With a dilapidated building, we have to buy a $10,000 batting ram to knock down the old doors at Jones Elementary, what is it?
tell me again.
The $10,000 battery.
Oh, the battery.
But just a sledgehammer and hammer.
You could probably just kind of question.
It's time for
You
creativity.
can go to the wall, you know?
well, I guess our work is done.
Any otherwise?
Otherwise.
Then the meeting is adjourned at 7:02 PM.
Next week.
June 30th. Next meeting, June 30th.
Next meeting is 6:30, 5:30.
5:30?
5:30.
Okay.
Public hearing
On the
and then a
On the 30th, because it'll be,